belief of Lebanese forces of the role of Christians in Lebanon. No claim against George Okais in 17 years. I want to preserve the right to be here and to live properly without being dhimmi. Lebanon is a mission, it's not a country. You have the essence of Ta'if is not there. ما فيك تلغي الدولة العميقة, the deep state, إلا ما تفوت فيها. ما نصدق أمتى نستقيل. خليني أقول لك إياها. Lebanese normal and common citizen, they don't like, they hate deep state. هودي مش شايفين إنه الخطر الحقيقي هو هون. An additional waste of time for 6 years. ما بقى فينا نرقع روني.
George Okais, welcome to MTV.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you for the invitation.
I've been wanting to do this for some time, and the personal reason is that I watch you religiously on TV. When you're on MTV, when you're on other channels, when you're being interviewed or sharing your thoughts late at night or early in the evening on Salwat, I'm drawn to the way you frame the wider problem we're facing. And the way you speak, the reason it resonates with me is because, I'm going to take liberty in saying this, I think your essence belongs to the crowd that I belong to, which is, I think, at heart, civil society. Even though you're a member of parliament in a traditional party, I don't think of you that way first. And that's why I'm drawn to you. Because if there are reformers in traditional parties in the Lebanese parliament, you're one of them. Just before recording, we were talking about Elias Hankash, who was sitting there a few weeks ago. I feel the same way towards him. A member of the oldest political party in the country. He's my age. He speaks my language. He understands the way I see the country. You're a little older than me, but I'm drawn to the narrative. And the reason I'm starting this way is because, in my experience, in years of talking endlessly with Lebanese activists, civil society members, new members of parliament, and members that have been around for a long time, ministers that served before, current ministers today, I think there is a narrative war happening, and it's happening here. On traditional media, alternative media, I think we're beginning to look back, and we're not agreeing on everything. Your case, I'm drawn to it. Now, we're going to get into politics. We're going to get into heavy politics. But I'd like to start with your personal story. I know the thin layer at the surface. I know you're a judge. I know you've lived abroad. You lived in the Emirates. I know cosmetics like Zahle. And I know we have common friends. Some of them are superstars, and that includes William Noon.
Yes.
And I think if I've met you in person, it's within proximity to William Noon, but we didn't talk directly. So let's begin with the personal story. First, your career, why you became a judge, and second, why you're in politics, not just a judge watching politics.
Well, Ronnie, finally we met. It's a long way here. My personal path is I belong first to the middle class, to the Lebanese middle class, dedicated to culture and to education. So I belong to a family with so many doctors, engineers, lawyers, from a small town near to Zahle called Riyeh, with this big airport there, military airport. So, and I belong also to the war generation. So I was 6 years old when the civil war came up suddenly in Lebanon. Not suddenly, but in 75, I think. It was really big and hard. So yes, the war affected me.
Mm.
My small family attached to the education culture influenced me a lot. So I'm a mix of the anxiety of of war and the liberal thinking of the middle class everywhere in the world.
Mm.
I'm not so conservative,
Mm.
even though I belong to Lebanese Forces, which is a traditional conservative Christian party. But maybe Dr. Samir Jaja acknowledged that this generation is not as conservative as our predecessor.
Mm.
So he wanted to have a new look of Lebanese Forces with the same ideology, but with a facelift. So I want to tell you a story. When we are in meetings in the block, so, and when I raised my hand to speak, so Dr. Jaja introduced me. So let's hear what the representative of civil society want to say.
Oh, he refers to you this way.
Yes. So, and I'm glad I can mix both of these two big community, Lebanese Forces, which is I'm very attached to the mission of this party, to the history of this party, many sacrifices on a personal level and on the party level. And I'm attached to the liberal way of thinking of the civil society in Lebanon. And I'm glad now, Ronnie, believe me, that I can speak with these two communities. I think I'm one of the links between these two communities because there is a lot of common vision and common interest between Lebanese Forces, mass, and the civil society actually in Lebanon, namely the rule of law, namely the anti-corruption vision, but with this belief of Lebanese Forces of the role of Christians in Levant. So yes, it's a bit complicated. I was a judge, as you said, and most of my behavior, of my actions, sometimes I wonder if it was the right decision not to came into politics, but to leave judiciary in Lebanon. But I think I had to leave because I have a family and my kids were growing up, and you know, salaries of judges in Lebanon are miserable. So I decided to not to bargain with my beliefs and my reputation, and to pay this big price to leave judiciary when you are a good judge, because I have a very clear record in the judicial inspection.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no claim against George Okais in 17 years. So I paid this price for my children, for my kids. We went to Abu Dhabi. I spent there 8 years of knowledge, of assessing the cosmopolitan aspect of Abu Dhabi and Dubai, which are great cities with great leadership. And I came back because Dr. Jaja in 2018 asked me if I want to run elections. And after 8 years of leaving Zahle and Lebanon, I think you feel yourself weak and you want to come back. Even if you are very wealthy and you have a very good job, a very good position in a very safe and sound environment, but I felt that I have to come to Lebanon. And at that time in 2018, we thought that we can do something for Lebanon. Even it was really alarming already, but we thought that with a big block of 15 MPs, we can do something, but unfortunately, crisis and collapse were faster than our action, and right now, you know the whole story. We grew up in number, but I think also the multiple phase crisis is too heavy, too big, that we barely can do something, especially with our people, to elevate our people.
The advantage of talking to you in this format is twofold. The first is that there's no commercial breaks, meaning we can talk as long as we need to and get a point across. I like listening to your, in a way, it's almost like a short biography that points you directly to where you are right now. 5 years after winning in 2018, you're an MP who, in my mind, represents the better aspirations of Lebanese parliamentarians within an old traditional party. And old is, I think, that word is not maybe accurate too, because the Lebanese Forces in itself is not a historic party. It's born out of a conflict, and it's attached to something that's older, which is Kata'ib. But it is a 1980s phenomenon that finds its way into the 90s, and we know the story. We know that it was at some point banned. But of course, you can't ban that kind of party in Lebanon. Samir Jaja pays a price. He's in jail in isolation for nearly 11 years. The Lebanese Forces returns to the scene in 2005. And in my mind, that year is a healthier year to talk about the Lebanese Forces' journey into politics. But there's a point I want to get across before we go into current things. I see 2005 as a marker and a turning point for two: civil society aspirations, which were on the streets in March 2005, and traditional parties that met eye to eye with at least most of civil society then. So I'll say it differently. Samir Jaja is coming out of prison. The Lebanese Forces supporters are on the streets, and you have the likes of Samir Asir and George Hawi protesting for the same broader cause. That, to me, is the beginning of the story. But if you ask most civil society members today, that's not the beginning. For them, whether they're right or wrong is different. But for them, I think they still think of the Lebanese Forces as a civil war story. And they can't shake that image off. And you're born 6 years before the war. So I tried to do my math. You're 54?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not bad, huh? 54. So you have maybe childhood memories of a pre-war era, but that's very young.
Yeah.
You grow up during the war. And you are both civil society and Lebanese Forces. So for you, why is it an easy road to take? In other words, you could be part of any of these independent groups. You could be an independent MP. You could have campaigned with the more October 17 oriented parties. And even in 2018, you could have joined those civil society lists. You made the decision to go into a party that has baggage from the war. That's, I think, I'm trying to be very diplomatic here. So for you personally, why did you see the road through the Lebanese Forces and not through an independent alternative group?
Because I don't want to be only an activist, and I want to be a politician with a bigger cause, a cause that it can go eternally, not only achieving, let's say, now e-government and anti-corruption and demolishing clientelism throughout the public administration. And when you settle this and when you achieve all this very good target and goals, but they are achievable in a space of time, but preserving the diversification of Lebanon in terms of communities and in terms, allow me to say it, of and preserving the presence of Christians in this part of this world, Ronnie, when you can see Christian leaving massively Palestine, Syria, Iraq, and all over the world. So when you have both big aspirations, building a country, institutions, rule of law state, independence of judiciary, but not only this, the sovereign presence of all communities in Lebanon, not only Christian, but since I'm a Christian, I want to preserve the right to be here and to live properly without being dhimmi. Because when you see our history here, only Maronite, I'm not Maronite, but I can be fair. I'm a judge. Only Maronite, Ronnie, هن الوحيدين اللي ما دفعوا جزية بتاريخهم ما كانوا ذمي. So, and I think this is a heritage that we have to be involved to maintain this mission of Lebanon, as Pope Jean Paul II mentioned brilliantly. Lebanon is a mission, is not a country.
There's the way you speak about something that's maybe an older language in civil society, which is you're talking about anxiety or communal anxiety, and you're being upfront about it. You're not. It's not that you're embarrassed to say it. On the contrary, you're able to say it in a way that makes sense to you.
This is me.
Right, and you're even acknowledging that you're taking yourself out of it and talking about it in a way that resonates, I think, among many Lebanese, particularly Christians, that don't feel politically at home anymore. And perhaps to a certain degree, in some ways, maybe the cosmopolitanism and the cultural sway that they contributed to is on the decline. And I think that language, and I've had Hisham Bou Nassif, who sat here, he speaks that language almost like an activist in a way. And he makes it his cause now, federalism or partition, or perhaps even divorce. But that language is the language that turns someone like me away from the Lebanese forces, not closer. And the reason I say this is because I respect the reformist movement within the Lebanese forces. 2018, or even the cabinet that served up until October 17, if there are any shining stars in that moment of near collapse, it's the Lebanese Forces cabinet ministers. They did a great job. Some of them are people that are unfortunately not in the political scene right now, but I think if history is going to be...
Like Camille?
I was going to say Camille, yes. To me, he's a...
My dear friend Camille.
Oh, he's a good... Okay. Oh, so
yes, we can say hi both to Camille.
Hello, Camille. I think he's in New York at the moment, maybe, or I don't know where he is.
He's everywhere.
He's everywhere.
In Mykonos, in Paris, in London.
Okay, so he's all over the place. But that kind of minister who served in a difficult stage, I think he's respected among both civil society and, to a degree...
Look what he's doing right now for the Beirut port blast investigation in London and Lebanon. So, yes, he always defend the right causes, Camille. And so...
But may I just one thing, because
go ahead.
And it's funny, we said Camille, now his last name escaped me.
Abu Sleiman.
Thank you, Abu Sleiman. When you said Camille, I'm like, the last name.
Yeah.
So Camille Abu Sleiman, who's competent with or without politics. He doesn't have to be in the Lebanese state. He will do just fine. He's respected, I think, across the spectrum. That, to me, is the type of Lebanese Forces politician I'm drawn to. Now, maybe I'm blind to a degree. Maybe I don't see the full picture. But when I hear the language of not exclusion, but more like this is a Christian party. If that language was not in the dialogue, I think I would be drawn even closer. But that's the moment where two things happen in my mind. It could be psychological. In 2023, one of the most reform-minded, or maybe the most reform-minded, traditional parties in the country is still speaking a language that makes me uncomfortable. And the second thing, it does it automatically. It takes me back to the Civil War. Not through violence, and not necessarily, it could be justified language, but I remember a different Lebanese
Pavlov
Forces.
syndrome.
Yeah, but anything that I said, does that echo within you when this stuff comes up? Do you feel any of that? Or is it, I'm not seeing it because simply I'm not a Lebanese Christian?
I fully understand what you're saying, and I think it's a very transparent conversation. And I'm very happy, very glad to unleash my thoughts. Let me reformulate my wording, and I want to tell you, and I think maybe you know it. I'm French educated, so I'm trying to translate everything in my mind from French to English. So maybe
Unfortunately for me, last night I had an episode with Camille Amoun. The audience reminded me it's Camille, not Camille.
Camille, yeah.
Camille. So that's why unfortunately, I'm not French educated.
So I can do a full job of a civil society activist because I'm really there. I'm really into the spirit that drive all the civil society causes right now in Lebanon. So I'm one of the MPs that signed the proposition of law regarding LGBTQ rights.
Right.
I'm fanatic for civil marriage. With everything that have regards with the environment. So, yes, from this perspective, you can see me as a full activist in civil society.
Yeah, and liberal too in your politics.
But at the same time, I see Lebanon as an oasis of tolerance, and so I like what Hisham Bounassif is saying. I'm not against his right to think that way, but I'm not totally with Hisham Bounassif scheme. I'm not there yet. So I still believe that Muslim and Christian and Druze have maybe the last chance because it's nearly 1 century. We are trying to coexist. And this big mission, this big picture that we are giving to the whole globe, I think it deserves one more try. And we have the tool of this attempt, Ronnie. It's Ta'if.
Yeah.
We did not execute Ta'if so far. 30 years after Ta'if.
Yeah.
You have the essence of Ta'if is not there. And what is the essence of Ta'if? 3 pillars. Sovereignty, le désarmement de Hezbollah,
Yes.
and
مجلس الشيوخ.
مجلس الشيوخ وانتخابات دون قيد طائفي لمجلس النواب.
Right.
And the disposition, the Article 95, I guess, speaking about the installment of the higher council for abolishing the confessionalism.
Right. And it's almost like a roadmap.
Yes, and the third is decentralization.
Yeah.
So I have everything to put all the communities at ease in Lebanon. And for me, it's a big crime against Lebanese people not to execute Ta'if, especially after 15 years of civil war. And once we have this Ta'if agreement, after this 15 years of civil war and the high number of killed people, and you know the whole story. And yet, after 30 years, we are still burying our head in the sand and not seeing the truth that we have an agreement. Let's implement this agreement, and let's try one more time to have a state. And I'm really calling all the other communities, and not only Muslim, some of Christians, because I'm not aligned with all Christian in Lebanon, believe me. Let's try to implement Ta'if to get neutrality of Lebanon, and the implementation of Security Council resolution, and we will have a brilliant state. Look at the tourists right now in Lebanon. You cannot drive in Lebanon these days.
This framework that you just outlined is what I listen to you religiously for, because when you go back to a roadmap that's available.
So you're not far from Lebanese Forces, huh?
You know,
I could bring you back.
You know, it's interesting. I've never really talked about this in years and years of podcasting, but I'll try. What you just said right now, the way you said it makes me feel at home. Meaning, the roadmap, implement it, it's there. You don't have to recreate anything. Divorce should not be an option right now. Divorce is unnecessary right now because there is something that's, you can implement it. And divorce is violent, divorce is ugly, and it may not work. There's a lot of hypotheticals, but let's say that discussion is happening anyway. And we could even say that if you fast forward years from now, maybe that is a de facto outcome anyway. But I think the more noble mission is to do what you're suggesting, which is implement Ta'if. And those 3 stages that you outlined is exactly what didn't happen. The Syrians stayed, Hezbollah grew, and there's no sectarian reform like a Senate, and there's no decentralization in a way that's meaningful. That, to me, is the language that draws me in. But emphasizing a community turns me off. And it could be on any community. I'll give you an example. The Sunni rights of Lebanon, I would run away from that, and I'd run. I would be out of the door before they say it. So therefore, a group like the Future Movement, which became increasingly one flavor over time, though it wasn't always like that, really turned me off. That becomes a Sunni party. I think the Lebanese Forces, in my mind, do not maybe pull in more people because of that. Maybe there's a lexicon that is acknowledging sectarianism and acknowledging one community's place and one community's comfort rather than what you're outlining. And the way you speak is civil society. So that's why it's interesting for me. You talk like a civil society activist, and you're a parliamentarian of a party that is community-oriented, communal-oriented.
But it's not deliberate in an intentional decision of Lebanese Forces. Okay, we have to admit Lebanese Forces, the inception from the outset, it was a Christian party.
Yeah.
With the aim of defending Christian region from Palestinian invasion and then from Syrian invasion. But right now, at the moment, believe me, Ronnie, it's not our decision to be eternally a Christian party. We have this aim and this aspiration of being a multi-confessional party. We won't, and it will come one day. But 2005,
Yeah.
as you said, it was our turning point.
Yeah.
2005, we had and it's normal, this is the restart of Lebanese Forces.
Yeah.
You restart your work with the old
The
figures,
foundation, yeah.
the founders.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, we had this facelift, and it's growing up, election after election. So I think we have to, in 2026, if there will be an election, because unfortunately we postponed the municipal one, and this is very unfortunate decision. In 2026, I think we will have a bigger spectrum of new faces in Lebanese Forces, and hopefully, really, hopefully, we will have MPs from other religion than Christian one.
It's an interesting reflection on a party that has done two things. It has grown in parliament during the hardest chapter of our life here, modern Lebanese history. You said it earlier, 15 MPs in 2018. The number is 18 or 19 at the moment? 19. So 19 in 2022. That is also important. A traditional party that expands, which means its popularity is genuine.
You are convincing your people, and you are convincing most the neutral and the hesitant voters before elections, and this is a very big mass. Plus, we have a big diaspora community as Lebanese Forces, so the one that they've been forced to leave country, especially in the 90s after Dr. Jaja الاعتقال. And if you gather all these groups, it's logical to have the biggest representation in parliament.
And also there's a message that didn't resonate on the other side, which is the Free Patriotic Movement may have been the largest, quote, Christian bloc, but the narrative that they were proposing didn't resonate the way it did maybe 15 years ago. And now they're on the losing side in terms of pure numbers and political power within parliament. But there's that one last stage, and if 2026 is the aim, that's great. But there's that one thing, and I think it's impossible, maybe, for a group like the Lebanese Forces to completely rebrand itself. And that could simply be because the name itself is a reflection of a difficult, dark chapter. And that is a name born from pain, not from politics only. Maybe that is also part of it, that it's trying to imagine a different name for a party almost. It wouldn't make sense. It will always be Al-Quwwat Al-Lebaniyya. And that's a paramilitary name. So maybe that is also part of it, that you can grow, but you cannot completely let go. And I think had Lebanon functioned post-2005, the Lebanese Forces would be a different party right now.
Yeah.
I will add one thing, and this is why I want to get into your role. This type of party is much better because you're in it. And
thank you.
Individuals like yourself make, I think, the case which needs to be hammered down, that, and you said it already, you can't just be an activist on Twitter and pretend like you're going to make change possible. Individuals and institutions matter. And if an individual like yourself is in the Lebanese Forces is better. And that's not activism, that's politics. That said, the journey is not easy. And the last few years, including the elections, Lebanon has been in a free fall. And I think there's a case that has not been made, it should be made, it's difficult to make it, a majority coalition matters. In your mind, why has it been so hard to make a majority happen? In other words, in 2005, it was easier to find common cause from activists on the street to Samir Jaja himself. Today, or just a few weeks ago, the same crowd, there's a split. You have MPs from October 17 that want nothing to do with the Lebanese forces. And there you have a non-majority. And I'll make it very straightforward. It should be possible to get 65 votes for Jihad Azhar.
Yeah.
Even when Hezbollah wa Amal and their friends leave for the second round, if the symbolic majority is there, you've won the story. You've won the narrative. The narrative is not being won. So first time I can ask an MP from the Lebanese forces why you think there are reform-minded MPs that can't stand the Lebanese forces and they don't want to even approach a name like Jihad Azhar.
It's 100 question in one question.
You are absolutely right.
So
You can pick and choose what you want from that, but it's more that
yes.
the drive to stay away rather than to work with.
Let me start by, because you mentioned Tayyar al-Watan al-Hur, and out of the old narrative and disputes between Lebanese forces and Tayyar, I want to tell you the essence of divergence between two parties, and both are Christian. First, Ronnie, I think في كتير ناس بيقولوا لك ما فيك تلغي الدولة العميقة the deep state إلا ما تفوت فيها. And this was the rhetoric of طيار الوطن الحر.
From the old.
كان بدهم يفوتوا على الدولة وبيظنون in their mind once they are inside the establishment they can deploy change, تغيير, الإصلاح. And it happened to be that the deep state is very big. So بلعون صاروا هن جزء من الديب ستيت. صاروا مثل غيرهم. بالعكس بمكان ما صاروا aggressive أكتر من غيرهم تيحموا حالهم من اللي صاروا معهم. Lebanese forces from the other school إنه you only can beat the deep state by staying outside the deep state. And you can bombard the deep state from outside. That's why you can feel that يعني كنا مثل اللي بيحط إصبعه بالمي السخنة وبيشيله دغري، يعني كنا نفوت على الحكومة ونرجع نطلع دغري. ما نصدق يعني ما نصدق امتى نستقيل. خليني اقول لك اياها، يعني عادة وقت اللي يستقيل حزب من الحكومة بيكون it's a bad moment انه اضطر يستقيل.
Or an honorable exit.
Yeah.
I mean it's
نحن كنا مبسوطين نستقيل وقت قامت الثورة. مشان هيك كنا مشجعين الثورة and we were fueling ground. So this is my first comment on your expose. I think the Lebanese normal and common citizen, they don't like, they hate deep state. So that's why we grew up in popularity and in a number of MPs. Because Lebanese people is seeing very clearly that we don't want a power brokerage inside the political arena. We are not like others. We can be in government, but our presence in the government, it's not similar to the presence of others. And you said it about Camille and all other ministers from Lebanese forces. Your second part of the big question, why changes MPs are not, they don't feel comfortable to speak or to collaborate with
And
Lebanese
sorry,
forces.
and I want to emphasize the reason I'm not putting the focus on, let's say, Lebanon al-Jadid or whatever that list was, the white paper, the white votes, is because that is a white vote that they should be criticized for not choosing somebody, but there are some change MPs that deliberately voted for someone else that's not a real candidate at the moment. That's why I focus in on them, not because they're worse. On the contrary, they could actually be much better in terms of what they want. But I don't know why they're not able to seek common cause with the Lebanese forces.
I can divide and split those MPs, the 12, into three main components. The first one is the logical one. Waddah, Mark, and Michel-el-Murr. They are literally with the opposition coalition. And they are one of the biggest ally for this opposition backbone. The other one is, the other group is the purely romantic. They are not seeing the danger of Hezbollah presence. And they are mixing everything together.
These are the ones that voted for Ziad Baroud and maybe the more extreme in terms of ideology.
Yeah. Because يعني في شيء اسمه دالتونيان مش هيك؟ دالتونيان هو ما بيشوف الألوان.
But could I pick your brain on this? So let's say
ما بيشوف اللون.
but let's
قدامه بس ما يعني ما بيشوفه. هودي مش شايفين إنه الخطر الحقيقي هو هون. مش التمايز بيني وبينك كقوات لبنانية وانت ببعض الملفات ببعض الأمور. في خطر عم بيهددك ويهددني ويهدد كل لبنان. هيدا we have to get rid of it first and then let's have this journey of competition.
But let me pick your brain as somebody who's in both civil society and the Lebanese forces, and most importantly in parliament. We could go on the other side of the names, which are Halima Kakour, Elias Jaradi, and Cynthia Zarazir. I think were the three that chose not to vote for Jihad as well. I think they voted for Ziad Baroud, if memory serves me right, all three. I think they, in essence, have the same characteristics that you have as a civil society member. I don't think of them as aliens, or for that matter, as bad actors. I think they won largely because they wanted to desperately reform the Lebanese state. Whether they can or not is a different issue. But I think they speak a language which resonates in that they want a better country, not a worse country. So they're seeing.
I'm not saying the opposite.
Yeah, but I'm trying to. It's interesting because I can ask you about
Ronnie,
how you.
when you cannot see the elephant in the room, you are in trouble.
No, but I wanted to ask you why you think.
Even if you have the best intention in the world and the best narrative, where you are not able to see the elephant in the room, you will be killed by this elephant.
But I want to ask you why. Let's say you're right. Let's say you're right. And I think I share most of what you're saying in terms of that's going to be a paralyzing problem for the good and bad actors together. Hezbollah is beyond politics. It's a security paralysis machine. But why you think they always equate Lebanese forces with Hezbollah? I'm trying to get, as somebody in your shoes who knows that that's not true, and somebody in your shoes who knows the Lebanese forces is a political party today, not a military machine.
Not only this is not true, this is insane.
Okay, so wait, but this is interesting
Do
because
we hold arms? Are we putting our hand on all institutions? Are we against Beirut port blast, or at the opposite, we are the first triggerer to having this investigation complete? So I think it's unimaginable
do you think
to
that
compare Hezbollah with Lebanese forces.
do you think they're simply not understanding what happened to Lebanon? And that is why they, for example, will say things like Lebanese forces and Hezbollah the same, or something which to me was already problematic from the beginning. Jihad Azhur and Sleiman Frangi are the same. That to me is a lazy way of looking at politics.
Exactly.
But I don't think they're lazy people.
I choose a smooth word to describe them as romantic.
So so that's interesting. So they're romantic, and that also could be
If I
because
want to
they're
be
new.
with good intention towards them, I'm choosing this. But yes, you said it very perfectly. You cannot say that Jihad Azhur and Sleiman Frangi are the same. You cannot say Hezbollah and Lebanese forces are the same. And you are not in position to judge everyone. But nevertheless, Ronnie, let me assure you that I am involved in continuous dialogue with Halima, with Firas, with Brahim, with all these gentlemen and ladies to try to come out with a common ground in our approach, because when you are not in a position to build a majority, you will have a totally paralyzed parliament.
So I agree with you. And may I ask you one more question? Why do you think it was easier for people that are as disciplined, as principled, like Brahim Namne? He was able at the end to vote for Jihad Azhur. Maybe his way of saying it was a bit off, maybe. He had to drink poison and vote. Whatever it takes, he did it. Najat Saliba voted for Jihad Azhur, as did Firas Hamdan. So these are ideologically driven October 17 MPs. They were able to do it. Is there any moderating, or maybe even, is there a middleman rule that allowed them to come closer? Is that something the Lebanese forces is doing, or is it maybe an ally? Is it another? I hear it all the time that Kataib was trying to fill that role too. But can you tell me from your side what
we're fine with the Kataib role because we have the same it's identical approach between Lebanese forces and Kataib, and you know that today we are aligned in every single matter related to Hezbollah, to presidential elections. So we don't mind to have Kataib playing this role, but from our side, yes, we are, and I told you, we are in a continuous dialogue with them. So, but I was trying to tell you that كتلة التغيير في ثلاث أقسام, 3 components. اللي فهموا إنه أكيد القوات منا مثل حزب الله وعم يشتغلوا معنا without any complex, without any reserve. سميتهم الثلاثة. وفي عندك اللي بيعتبروا إنه حزب الله والقوات اللبنانية مثل بعضهم وهن ضد المنظومة حليمة عندكم. وفي اللي بالنص اللي صوتوا لأزعور مثل إبراهيم, اللي هودي يعني ما كتير بيرتاحوا للعلاقة مع القوات يمكن, بس بيعرفوا إنه في اختلاف. يعني ما وصلوا للي وصل له وضاح ومارك وميشيل, بس منهم مثل حليمة بلشوا يحسوا إنه there is big differences between two parties, and this is clear, this is obvious, the differences.
But I think it's better delivered when it's someone like you doing that, because if you remove the titles, if you remove the elections, if you remove your political aspirations, if you're just a judge, a lawyer, an academic, you're pretty much speaking the same language. I can't really differentiate.
بدك إقرار نهائي
Sure.
إنه أنا
Yeah.
بدي حوار معهم. Yes.
No.
You can say this.
No, but it's
Yes.
no. I think it's good that it's better that. This is why I was saying earlier, and I had this conversation.
Halima is a very dear and close MP, and it's very well known that I cooperate with her in many aspects of legislations, and with others as well, with Firas, with Ibrahim. But yes, I think في غيرهم في المجلس يعني مش بس هن.
No, of course. But I even last night I had this conversation on my podcast about whether or not that's a productive role. In other words, being part of an old party, but standing eye to eye with things like LGBT rights, or for that matter, civil marriage. You're speaking the language of October 17 too. But I think that problem,
and I will not change.
And you will not change, but that lack
this
of
is my DNA, Ronnie.
But the lack of majority, I think, is the wrong signal sent by those three MPs. I think they could have contributed to sending a clearer message, rather than Jihad Azor and Sleiman Frangi are the same sides of the problem. That, to me, they misread the story.
Yeah.
But there's another part that I'd like to go down with you. Maybe we can, the rest of the conversation can go this road, and it's an uneasy road for me. I want to step back and look at previous rounds since 2005, where things move in a certain direction in Lebanon that's unfavorable for the Lebanese forces. For example, 2005 until 2008, it's probably the hardest time to come back to politics in Lebanon, because everything that's going wrong is happening those 3 years. Assassinations, the July War, the sit-in in downtown, the delegitimization of the Senora government, paralysis, bombings happening all over the country, scare tactics, culminating into 2008, street battles, violence, Doha. That's a horrible position for any political party that wants reform. Decisions are made which may not be the decisions a party wants to take, but they're taken. Somebody who's not considered to be fully in line with March 14 becomes slightly more favorable due to Doha. A president emerges like Michel-el-Murr, who becomes acceptable, but it's not the priority pick. Becomes a consensus candidate, a national unity government, and all that can go wrong with it. And the Lebanese Forces is part of it. You jump ahead 8 years later, the unthinkable happens. Meaning, first, Saad Hariri endorses Sleiman Frangi. That in itself, I think that goes down in history as maybe one of the worst strategic decisions made. But the burden of that decision doesn't fall on him. It falls on the Lebanese Forces when a calculation is made to bring michel-el-murr to Ba'abda. I don't think the Lebanese Forces ever wanted michel-el-murr in Ba'abda. And I think it's safe to say Lebanese Forces accustomed to Michel Sleiman, but they were forced to make that decision. Michel Sleiman. Post Doha.
Oh yeah.
Michel-el-murr, I don't think they were forced to, but they made a decision that in hindsight, I think, at least Samir Jaja has said it, was a mistake. A mistake to a point. And I think all of us share that sentiment today, that the last 6 years were terrible for Ba'abda and for the country. My instincts tell me only one scenario remains, which is all roads at the moment point in a new direction, which is familiar, Joseph Aoun. And I see that as becoming the fait accompli. And I worry that what you're saying, everything that resonates with me, moves in the opposite direction of where Lebanon moves, which is national unity, army commander in Ba'abda, Hezbollah stays right where it is, and everything we talked about pre-elections, post-elections, it's a sideshow. We're going to have more or less the usual terrain for years and years to come, and it doesn't even matter what Dah or Halimi say, or what the Lebanese Forces or even Harakat Amal say. Hezbollah wins.
And it's an additional waste of time for 6 years.
Right. But could you say that and acknowledge that this is a problem that the Lebanese Forces doesn't contribute to, but finds itself unable to do anything about? Is that a fair assessment?
Let me tell you, and I think right now I have to deliver my strongest statement in this podcast. You have here a human being split it into two politically.
We said beforehand that we both grew twice.
Yeah, the belly.
The bellies.
Politics, yes. I hate politics because of this. You don't have time neither to do sport or
I think both of us should have photos 10 years ago. We were good.
Split into two, 14th of March, 17th of October. So it's in my vein. This is blood inside me. It's half 14th of March and the other half is 17th of October. The first is the general consensus regarding the future of Lebanon, national identity for Lebanon, with all the religious communities, and the other one is the liberal thinking, the reform needed to our country, building proper institutions, and so on and so forth. I think the best scenario, the best case scenario for Lebanon is to have a Maronite marriage between a 14th of March and the 17th of October.
A Maronite marriage?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
So زواج ماروني زواج ماروني يعني ما فيك تطلق بين خط 14 أذار، يعني السيادة، الحرية، الاستقلال. شو كان الشعار؟
Yeah.
بال 2005
Independence.
حرية، سيادة، استقلال. شو شعار 17 تشرين؟ Accountability. إصلاح. بناء الدولة، بناء المؤسسات، وقف الفساد، وقف الهدر. So you have to have a marriage between these two concepts. And I think right now we lost both.
Yeah, I agree, but that's the
this is the tragedy of our generation, of people like both of us, because we previously believed in 14th of March, and you know what? You said there were assassination, explosions all over the country, sit in the downtown. You know why? Because we were strong. And once they reached their goals in splitting 14th of March into 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 big parties, the mission for them were accomplished.
I think it may look preferable to have somebody like Joseph Aoun if the country slips further into anarchy. That comfort that comes with him reminds me of the comfort post-Doha, where politics was paralyzed, battles took the country to the verge of a civil war, and people were relieved that an army commander reached Babda and paralysis continued. I fear paralysis will continue post-Babda election. And I want to ask you the last question before we wrap it up. I'm lucky. The country is small, and even though everyone knows each other, I'm particularly lucky in that sometimes I'll write something or sometimes I'll post something and someone wants to talk. And that person could be someone close to Samir Jaja. And then a few days later, I'm in Ma'arab, talking about what I wrote or what I shared with Samir Jaja himself. These are things I don't advertise. I don't post them on social media. But I find it's a privilege to be able to sit with him, with only a few people in the room, having this intellectual back and forth. And I appreciate it more because we don't agree.
Yeah.
Although we're talking the same goal, but we don't agree on how to get there. And actually, last August in Ma'arab, at the, I forget the name now, the annual
This Shahada.
This Shahada, thank you. This sort of almost like in the fog in the mountains with people listening to these speakers, and suddenly Samir Jaja emerges at the end, and the crowd is really excited. And I'm there literally just as an observer mostly, but I'm among people that I respect, and some of them are civil society members too. Maybe they don't advertise that they go. There's something he said in that speech and what he said to me in private, which to me doesn't add up. His conviction is that solutions are local.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. And I want to ask you what you think. Hezbollah to me is not a local story. And I see no local solution to their paralysis. I simply don't see it, although he believes it. Now, he believes it through elections. He believes it through popularity and messaging. He believes it, and I think the way we talked about, which is you have a majority that works towards that. That to me is March 14. And everything that went wrong because of Hezbollah. To me, what he's saying is a repetition of what happened to March 14. I simply don't see it. And I want you to tell me how you see that problem moving forward. Do you also believe it's a local solution, that there's a local dimension, and that elections and civil society and politics that can overcome it? Or do you think of it more in the way I see it, which is there has to be an external solution to Hezbollah?
I will answer your question by asking you a question. Do you think in 2005 George W. Bush and Jacques Chirac were supposed to have this very solid and firm position towards Bashar al-Assad to withdraw Syrian troops from Lebanon if Lebanese people did not invade Saht al-Shahada with 14th of March? I don't think so.
I agree.
So you can be the trigger. You can be, as Lebanese people, a local player and local actor. You have to fight for your cause. You have to resist all kind of danger, and you have to be courageous. And from this angle, Samir Jaja always believed that Lebanese people can elect good MPs properly without any kind of cultural corrupted behavior during elections. ادفع له $100 بيشتريه بيروح بيصوت لإكس هلا مش معروف شو موقفه. اليوم بيرشح هيدا بكره بيرشح الثاني. So ولا أحسن من أسامي. بس yes, هون I think Samir Jaja meant this Lebanese people have a role to play. And like in 14th of March, he played tremendously his role. He's requested, and in 17th of March, he played it again. Now, and every year, if he's called to play the same role, his duty is to play it and to go till the end. We have regional and international aspect of our distress, yes.
Yeah.
This dire situation is mainly from the interference of foreign states, like Iran, for example. So when Hezbollah won the election in 2018, the second day, we all know the famous statement of an Iranian responsible congratulating himself for having 74 MPs. So let me tell you, it's our destiny, our country. We have the spirit of 14th of March and the dedication of 17th of October. Otherwise, we will collapse. Right now, we have a big opportunity. We have a collapsed and totally failed state, and the state really very ugly, with confessionalism, with clientelism, with every kind of corrupted mindset in all layer of responsibilities and population. So we have to build it from the scratch. وما نعتمد سياسة الترقيع. ما بقى فينا نرقع روني. It's time to do it once for all and properly, and to face the problems. Hezbollah is a problem. It's not the only problem, but I said it last night in a TV show. عنده إفيه إكران يعني يحجب. I don't know how to say it in English, but you cannot go deep into your problems if you're not able to solve the first one, the first layer, who's embedding everything, which is the presence of a Duwaili inside your state.
I'll wrap it up with this thought, and then I'll give you the final word. I'm 42, so 12 years younger than you. I think that's the math. Yes. I worry that I'm going to see more events like Tayyouneh, where the state is trying, Tariq Bitar is trying against all odds, and a group like the Lebanese Forces and other groups too, but primarily this group, is pushed in a direction that is bad for politics. And then suddenly, images emerge where people are running and fleeing, even when this is not civil war. It's not. This is not sectarianism. This is a Hezbollah-led violent overhaul of the judicial process. And the Lebanese Forces is forced to make decisions that are not always within its own interests. I feel instinctively that if things are to move in the right direction in Lebanon, that's the consequence. And on the other side, what I worry about is someone like Michel Sleiman, who was a very careful, cautious, reluctant president. Even he was able to finally acknowledge something like the Ba'abda Declaration. That's his legacy now. It's very hard to imagine anyone in Ba'abda, whether it's Jihad Az'ur, whether it's Joseph Aoun, or anyone like Ziad Baroud in the middle, ever taking that risk again. And that, to me, it shows that elections and winning in popularity and even maybe forming a coalition in certain areas. You can do that, but you're left with the paralysis that destroys the country. And I don't know if the Lebanese forces or any party can really overwhelm that problem. The last time that was tried was in 1975, and the country degenerated into hell. And that's the country we both grew up in. I fear that that's the path, and I don't really know any other way out of it. But you'll have the final words. Maybe you can tell me something else, maybe more optimistic.
Ronnie, I was really touched by this conversation, and I don't think it's a common politics conversation, because it was really deep and trying to ask the real questions, the genuine one. I want to end by saying the following. When you have someone kidnapping a hostage, and right now we are in the same scenario, we have an armed party in Lebanon holding all the other Lebanese citizens as hostage. So you have 4 solutions. So either the kidnapper will kill the hostage. The second one, a foreign force will liberate the hostage against the will of the kidnapper. Third, the kidnapper by himself, by the force of his conscience,
releases the hostage.
Will release the hostage. So there's
three
scenarios, not 4.
Or the fourth is that the kidnapper and the hostage die.
Yes, if we continue like this, I think, yes, we will both die.
Yeah, no, but I see that as a possibility.
So we don't want to be killed, and we're still alive, and as long as we're alive, we will fight for the sovereignty of this country, for one army having the authority of holding weapons. We are not seeking any foreign, as Lebanese forces, I'm telling you this, we are not seeking for any foreign intervention to liberate us. نتمنى, we wish that one day Hezbollah consciously will liberate the hostage.
That's a huge bet on the
Yes.
biggest paramilitary force on the planet,
Yeah.
but
they are if they are Lebanese. انتبه أنا ما كنت بحلم إنه السوري منه لحاله يفل. كان بده يعمل الغلطة اللي عملها مع رفيق الحريري ويصير كل اللي صار تيظهر. بس هودي إذا هن فعلا بيدعوا إنهم لبنانية وعندهم نواب بالمجلس النيابي وهيدا الشعب هن بيمثلوه، لازم يعرفوا إنه لا التقسيم بيفيدنا وبيفيدهم، ولا استمرارهم بهيدا النهج. معلش عم بحكي بالعربي اسمح لي، بس it's emotional. ولا استمرارهم باللي عم يعملوه رح يوصلهم لنتيجة. في فقط اتعاظهم من التاريخ إنه ما حدا في يلغي التاني بلبنان. It's a historical fact. No one can eliminate others in Lebanon. This is our destiny. That's why people like Hisham Bounasif are having legitimacy in their speech, in their discourse, because in reality Hezbollah are not leaving so many alternatives for
I
us
agree.
to opt.
And I'll reflect on one last thing, which is things move in a direction with or without people wanting it to. And if that is the conclusion of Lebanon, I don't blame anyone for anything. I think all the good people tried their best, and they were overwhelmed by a paralyzing problem. And I think if still has a chance, it happens with someone in your shoes who's old enough to appreciate the work that did take place, who doesn't throw away everyone pre-October 17, who acknowledges the achievements of March 14, and who is half within October 17. That's exactly the right mix you would want in a future politician in this country.
Yes.
And I'll say it again, the Lebanese Forces is better because leadership values that you hold make it a better institution. I'm more drawn thanks to you. And the last thing, you're from Riyadh.
Yes.
One of my best episodes I've done was with Ilyas Malouf.
Yes. The famous Ilyas.
The famous Ilyas who loves trains, loves the old rail network and wine today. And sitting there talking about Lebanese history and politics was, I think, the right way to do it. And I appreciate somebody who's taken themselves from civil society into politics. He tried his way through an NGO. You're doing it your way in the Lebanese Forces.
You have Charles Ashe from Riyadh. You know
That's
this.
true. That's true. You have a lot of interesting characters from Riyadh.
Yes.
But with that, thank you for spending nearly an hour and a half with me.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ronnie. It was a real pleasure.
Pleasure's mine.
Thank you. Thank you.